Good morning, viewers. I'm going to do a video on towing with my F350. It's a 22 Ford F350 with the 7.3 liter Godzilla. I've wanted to do a video for a while and I just haven't gotten around to it, so I'm getting it done today. So I have a Arctic Wolf 29-foot travel trailer, or fifth wheel, sorry, used to have a travel trailer. So I have a 29-foot Arctic Wolf camper. It weighs in at about 9,000 pounds, give or take. I'll get a picture of the sticker and maybe attach it here at the end. I'm actually picking it up from getting new tires, and maybe that'll be another video. I've decided to replace the factory tires, which I think were Castle Rocks. I had them for about a year, but I've seen enough videos of people that have the tires that come on from the factory to know that I didn't want to keep those tires more than a year. So I'm on my way to pick up the camper now, and then I'm gonna, after I get hooked up, I'm going to start recording again and just sort of, give you some initial thoughts. I've been towing with it for a year now, but I'll give you my towing thoughts on the F350 and the Godzilla after I get hooked up here. And we have about a 20-minute trip back to where we store the camper. So just some points on the F350 that I'd like to point out. I've had it for a year now. I have a little over 11,000 miles on it, so it's not, I'm not like a new truck owner, someone that's just got my truck and, because obviously when people get their vehicles, they're sort of enamored with them. They really love them, and you don't really get a real good review, to be honest. So I've had this F350 now for a little over a year. It's a Lariat. It did have the camper package, so it's got the hookups for the camper and the bed. It's got the larger touchscreen, leather, so it's a nicely equipped truck. I will say, first off, the first thing that I wish I would have gotten on this vehicle, and I didn't get to order this one. I purchased it in 22 when there was obviously mass shortages, so it did not come with the rear taillight camera, and I really wish I had that, because to see over the back seat without that camera to line up the hitch, the fifth wheel hitch, is a pain in the butt. So that's that partly that's my fault for just not ordering one or getting one with that feature. It's obviously got the tail light, or the lift gate tailgate camera, and that's great for backing up for regular hitches. But to get the fifth wheel hitch lined up just right, I have to sort of prop myself up and look over my shoulder to get that lined up perfect, and it's not ideal. So minor point, but for sure, if you're getting a truck and you're ordering one and that's an option and you have a fifth wheel hitch, I highly recommend that taillight camera in the bed. Otherwise, as far as towing goes, this camper dry weight is about 8,350 pounds. So all loaded up, with so the camper with all its weight and the truck, comes in at about 18,000 pounds. The tongue weight, or the bed weight on this camper, is about 1,250 pounds. My truck this truck as spec doesn't have the moon roofs and some other higher end Lariat features that might add to the weight, but this truck as spec has 3,900 pounds of cargo capacity, so I'm well under my cargo capacity. We're probably we're obviously in the 9,000 to 10,000 pounds once everything's all said and done with the cargo capacity and everything. The truck tows great. I have no complaints about how the Godzilla tows. I know there's a lot of comparisons between the Godzillas and the diesels, and I've driven both vehicles. I haven't owned the Power Stroke, but I've driven them, and a lot of what you'll find out, and I think a lot of sort of the quote unquote common sense when it comes to towing, is if you have let's say upwards of 12,000 pounds or more of trailer weight, and you're going to be towing, in hilly conditions or mountainous conditions, or towing a lot of heavy loads in excess of 12,000 pounds, I would think, from a preference perspective, you'd potentially want the Power Stroke. This trailer, in the 8 to 10,000 pound rating, the Godzilla tows this trailer no problem. I've taken this trailer down to Missouri, which is a very hilly, I wouldn't say mountainous region, but a lot of big steep grades down in Missouri. On the way, we went down to Lake of the Ozarks area, and this truck had no problem towing up and down those hills. Now, I had no trouble maintaining speed. There was a couple really long climbs where I was following somebody at the time who didn't have a trailer, and I necessarily wasn't going to try to keep up with them going 75 or whatever speed he was going up some of those hills. But just going the speed limit, 65 miles an hour or 55, this truck has no problem towing this. And I think anybody that gets this truck with this type of capacity or weight will be really happy. Now, gas mileage, here's the deal. People really get hung up on gas mileage, and I get it. Gas isn't inexpensive. But when you weigh the extra cost of getting that diesel and the extra cost of maintenance and the extra cost of the diesel gas itself, you're going to be at a wash, if not coming out ahead, depending on the weight and what you're towing. So I don't think that really should come into play as a decision-making factor, to be honest. They're just going to, the lower cost of the Godzilla, the 7.3, and the lower cost of maintenance and the lower cost of the fuel itself is going to, far outweigh any gas mileage advantages. In my opinion, that should not be a deciding factor whatsoever. The power and the extra torque that you get with the diesel, if you're pulling a much heavier load than what I'm pulling, for sure. And just another point, I went the F350 because I just decided, for the little bit of extra cost, I wanted the extra leaf spring and the extra features that the F350. I don't really see, in my mind, getting an F250 just didn't make any sense, because if I do ever want that extra cargo capacity, I have it. And there's not a huge cost savings between the F250 and the F350. Today, I'm in Wisconsin, and it is a atypical spring day anywhere else in the country. But today it's snowing a little bit here and there. Wind gusts probably in the 20 to 25 mile an hour range, and you may be able to hear some of that, on the microphone. Maybe not, but it is a really gusty, windy day, and I would say I'm really happy with having the F350 and going with the fifth wheel after having travel trailers, or a travel trailer, and a F-150, where on a windy day I would get pushed around and not feel super safe. A strong wind gust could, even with the weight distributing hitches on a travel trailer and the F-150 we used to have, a strong wind gust, that would wake you up. With the F-350, having a fifth wheel hitch with that, cargo in the bed the way it is, today, yeah, I can feel the wind, no doubt. Anybody driving a trailer today is going to feel that wind, especially when it gusts. But I feel, I've never not felt safe towing in this truck with these types of winds and having the stability that you get with the larger truck, and going over, sort of over capacity the way I did. So, but to get back to the point of the Godzilla, plenty of pickup. I can easily get up to highway speed, like I'm coming out of a town right there. and I'm at 3,500 RPM, and I'm already at almost 65 miles an hour. So plenty of pickup. I would say the downsides of the Godzilla is you're hitting that power at a much higher RPM. So going up and down big steep grades, you know, I'm running 4,000 or 5,000 RPMs, and it's a little louder. You know, you're hitting those RPMs and the truck's a little louder. And I was used to the EcoBoost, which I thought was a great motor, towed my travel trailer great, you know, aside from the wind and stability issues on, you know, really windy days. I love the EcoBoost, great motor, but I was used to getting power at a much lower RPM. You know, that dual turbo in the EcoBoost gets most of its power under 4,000 RPMs. This truck gets most of its power above 3,500 RPMs. I think it's 45. I don't. You could look up this, you know, the specs, but I think its peak power is around 4,500 RPMs. And when you're going on big grades, you're hitting those RPMs for sure. So you have to be ready for that. My understanding is this truck, this motor, was spec'd to be for industrial, you know, commercial use. It is meant to be worked hard. You know, some people say, you know, it was over-engineered, meant to be the primary engine for commercial fleets that don't want to go the extra cost of the diesel. And I haven't had any issue. Like I said, I'm at 11,200 miles. We've gone down to Missouri. We've gone all over the, you know, Wisconsin, Midwest, and I've never had one service call on this engine. The transmission, I have not had a service call on it, but I will say that it's got some quirks. When I'm driving, when I'm pulling away from a stop sign, or sometimes when you know, I'm getting up to speed, I will say there are times where the transmission isn't as smooth as I'd like it to be. I will also note that when the truck is cold, it does not shift into gear right away. And I've read other posts about this issue. I've heard there's a service, whatever they call the service tickets. There's a note or a service note on it, and supposedly there's a software fix for some of this. And I've just come to understand that when my truck is cold, I need to give it a second to warm up, or I'm in Wisconsin once again, and over winter, I'm probably remote starting it anyways. But if I just get in the truck, back out of my driveway, and go to put it in drive, sometimes there's a 3 or 4 second delay between, I'll start rolling backwards before it shifts into drive if the truck's not warmed up. And I'm going to speak to the Ford dealer about that. They had told me, you know, after I bought it, that there was some service advisories coming out and some software fixes. And if that doesn't fix it, you know, I mean, I have plenty of warranty left. If that doesn't fix it, I'll make a bigger stink about it and tell them I don't think that's normal. But otherwise, I'm happy with the transmission. I like to have the ability to manually select my gears. You can gear down if you would like. A lot of people have complained on some of the forums. They don't like the transmission hopping between 9th and 10th gear, or maybe even 8. So some of the people will lock it into 8, which is a cool feature. I don't really hardly ever do that, because I'm comfortable with the transmission going into 9th and 10th gear when I'm, you know, on straightaways, or when I'm not, going up and down hills a lot. So I'm comfortable with the transmission just doing what it needs to do. And other than those few little quirks, I'm really happy with the, day-to-day driving, because I use this truck for work. I'm happy with the transmission and the shifting. As far as fuel mileage goes, I know it's a hot topic on a lot of the forums, and I'm a member of a couple of the different F350 and Godzilla forums, and that's probably one of the most common questions. What's your gas mileage? The first thing I'm gonna say to gas mileage is if gas mileage is a big concern to you, then the F-350 with the Godzilla, or the F-250, the Godzilla is probably not an engine, if you're big on gas mileage, that you're going to want to consider. And here's why. I just driving around town and for my job, I don't drive the truck a ton for business because I have a smaller vehicle, a Chevy Equinox, that I drive for my company. But I would say I average 10 to 11 miles per gallon just driving around town in this truck. So, on the highway, if I'm just running, sometimes I have to run a couple hours on the highway for a project or whatever. I probably get 13 or 14 if I'm, sort of lucky. There has been times when I've gotten 15 miles to the gallon, but that's pretty much tops. When I tow, and just, not super hilly or mountainous areas, towing, I'm probably getting 7 or 8, but it's been as bad as 5 or 6 on mountainous, hilly, going through Missouri on a couple of, on a couple those days when we were down there. It was windy and there was a lot of hills, and I was getting, at some of those stretches, I was getting 5-6 miles to the gallon. So on average, I would probably say I get 7 or 8, towing with this camper. So if that's a big deal to you and you're really hung up on gas mileage, then you're going to be disappointed. Then go with the diesel. If gas mileage, despite the extra spending, if you really want better gas mileage, then I think you should go with the diesel, because you're not going to be happy if you're expecting to get 10 to 15 miles a gallon in this truck. In my experience, it's just not going to happen. But I'm happy with that because I know that I'm paying less for the gas, and I spent $10,000 less on the truck itself. And you got to drive a heck of a lot of miles to save. I don't think anybody would ever save that $10,000 back. Maybe if you own a truck like this for 8 to 10 years and put on a couple 100,000 miles, then maybe you could, if you get the diesel, then maybe you could save that money back. But I don't ever see it happening. After you have I've heard that when the diesels get up to that kind of mileage, they need, you have fuel issues or turbocharger issues or whatever, and those costs get very expensive. I've heard some people say, there's another guy, I think he's out in Wyoming, he does some YouTubes on his Godzillas, and I mean, he basically said, listen, you could spend more on replacing the fuel system on one of those diesels on the Power Stroke than you just buy a whole new motor. And to me, that was, he made a really good point. Like, if I'm going to have to spend 8 to 10 grand to get, turbochargers or a fuel system replaced on a diesel, and when I could just go buy you can just go buy this crate motor for that amount, you get a whole brand new motor. So to me, that made a lot of sense. Now, once again, if you're really looking at the gas mileage and calculating it every day, wanting to know what you're getting, I would say you probably don't want to get this truck. And it's just a trade-off. It is what it is. I'm happy with it. That mileage to me is fine. I will admit I'm a little bit of a lead foot. I like to get on the gas a little bit. I probably don't drive this, I drive, at or just over the speed limit when I'm towing. I'm not going slower to try to save gas. I definitely don't speed with the campers. Obviously, you don't want to be doing that. But I would definitely say I'm a little bit of a lead foot. So maybe I'm not going to be getting the best gas mileage anyways. So that's my thing on gas mileage. I hope that's helpful to you. I'm on a pretty good straightaway here, and I don't know if you can tell with the camera, but the winds are coming across these farm fields pretty good right now. And once again, getting back to my point, I feel totally safe and stable in this, but I can definitely feel the wind hitting the side of that camper and pushing me around a little bit. This is not a real typical day in Wisconsin. We're sort of in one of those we had a little bit of a fake spring, we call it, and we're sort of back to semi-winter weather. We don't get obviously it's, we're coming up on tornado season, so we can get some pretty heavy windy days, but nothing like the plains or going through the Dakotas sometimes, where you're really getting hit hard with some big gusts and you're fighting it the whole way. I'm almost back to the storage area where I store the camper, so I'm gonna cut this video short. I'll add the pictures for the stickers here if I can at the end, but I appreciate you watching. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate that. I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos on these types of things because I find it interesting, and I like watching other people's videos on this channel or on these platforms. So go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll see you later. Thank you. So I'm trying a video. I just want to give you a little feel for what this wind is like that I was towing in. Hopefully you can hear me. I've tried this 3 times now, and I don't have a remote mic with me handy today, but this wind is gusting at 25 to 35 miles an hour right now, and you can see, right, if I step over here by the camper, you can see a little bit of the camper shaking right in the wheel well with these wind gusts. It's sort of hard to see because it's been dusting, but this is the 291 RL from Forest River. It's an Arctic Wolf. I'll do a video on this camper later, but I was just hoping to give you a little bit of idea what I was just towing in just now. The wind's coming across that field, hitting the side of this camper and rocking it back and forth. There's the truck. You can see I have the Rhino box for the hitch. Thought about getting a different hitch, but I haven't got that far. And I do have the Demco auto slider. That may be a question I